From the News Channel 5 Network, this is MorningLine.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on MorningLine. Nick Beres here on a Wednesday. We're not going to talk about the weather other than to say that I'm wearing a sweater, and it does appear as though my guest this morning is wearing a sweater as well. Good for him. But other than that, it's not a weather-related show, even though everyone else seems to be talking about it. You're smart enough to be inside, out of the cold, watching this show, and you're welcome to join in the conversation because this morning we're going to be talking about, malpractice, the types of lawsuits, whether or not you feel as though you've been wronged by a doctor or at a hospital. And you'd be surprised how many people wonder about that and think, did I have a case? Do I have a case? And what do I have to do to act on it? And we'll get into some of those issues and how the laws change with that. And take your phone calls, your chance to join in the conversation with Clint Kelly, malpractice attorney.
Nick.
Good to have you, sir.
Thank you.
And again, you look very dapper.
Well, thank you
I like
so
it. The
much.
sweater works. I'm a little more comfortable because I think later today, I'm wearing jeans and boots. I'm going to be out in this cold reporting on it. That's what we do. Whereas you go back to your nice legal office, very scholarly. You sit there and you'll be going over documents. Maybe today you'll do a little deposition. Oh, maybe you'll have to show up in court, but it'll be warm.
Generally. But
See?
today I was looking for an excuse to wear this sweater, and I finally got one.
There you go. It's definitely cold enough for it. It's good to have you on this morning. And the phone lines are open, 737-7587, if you want to jump in. But let's just be clear. The types of cases you handle, again, for maybe a viewer that's meeting you for the first time, even though Clint's a regular, type of cases.
3 components to every case I take. There's been negligent care by a healthcare worker, be it a doctor or a nurse or some other healthcare worker, that caused a serious injury, and that injury is permanent. The patient can't recover, can't work, has lost an organ or lost an ability to have a normal life.
Right.
Those types of cases I take.
Negligent care.
Yes.
And the key on that is proving what negligence is. And we always go into that. But it's whether, and we'll just lay this out at the top, people go to hospitals sometimes, you don't get the desired effect. Doctors are not always miracle workers. They do the best they can. You're looking at whether or not they performed up to what the standard would be in general for the industry, right?
Right. A very precise case, a very small set of cases, because the vast majority of cases are not negligent care. They are what we call them, what physicians call bad outcomes, where the doctors have done everything they can do or the nurses have done everything they can do, and sometimes you just get bad results.
Okay. I'm trying to think, we'll get to some of the phone calls as we go, as you think about maybe your situation or a question about it. Are there cases sometimes at the national level you still look at and, that make big headlines, usually involving celebrities or something? The one I wanted to ask you, is there any new development? Because you said, I think there's going to be a big case here, and there's going to be a lawsuit filed, and it was before it had happened, and you're right. There's questions about Joan Rivers' death. Right. Remember, have they moved forward on that? You suspect she has a lawyer now, her daughter, right?
She has, and since that has occurred, I have not heard a word about what's going on with that. But I knew when I initially read about the facts that there were too many things going wrong in the care in that case.
Right.
When physicians take selfies when they're providing surgical services to a patient, it's one of those where there's smoke, there's fire, and that's, I think, what's happened in Joan Rivers' case.
That's crazy. I knock on wood, I have never had general anesthesia for a major surgical procedure. But you just wonder sometimes what goes on when you're out. And I know the vast majority of doctors are good, but they don't allow cameras in there anymore. My son, who's 14 now, when he was delivered, and actually it had to be C-section. Well, I was there with the camera to begin with everything, and I was in the OR for the C-section. I videotaped everything. Now, I didn't show the blood and guts and all that, but I was there with the camera. Can't do that anymore. You can't do that. I don't believe you can. I've had friends that in there now, no camera.
Nick, you're like the 5th or 6th person that's told me that, because I did not know that they had eliminated cameras during deliveries. Now, that may not be all hospitals, and that may not be all obstetricians, but I have heard that from multiple people that's been a change over the last few years.
And why do you suspect that is?
Lawsuits.
Meaning that if they do something wrong, I've got it on video.
Absolutely.
And I've got proof of it.
Well, I mean, you think of all the circumstances that we've had the last couple of years where a video made the difference.
Yes.
Or absence of a video caused a controversy. And when you've got it on tape, I mean, it's just, there's no denying what's happening.
Well, the way I look at it, law enforcement welcomes video. Most of the officers I know like it because just as I might make a claim that you did something wrong that caused a problem with my newborn son, if there's video, they can look at that and say, you know what, this was just a bad outcome, but we did everything right, and we've got the video to prove it. I think video can cut both ways.
It can exonerate as much as it can.
That's what police officers will say.
And like, there are many types of surgeries that involve scopes. I mean, that's a common practice nowadays. Your surgeons oftentimes will not video the procedure. They may take a picture of what they're seeing, but they won't video it for the very reason you say, because it can inculpate them, expose them to a negligence claim.
I guess, you know, I suppose if you're a surgeon that feels that you do everything right, you know, mistakes happen, and that's different. So a mistake is not necessarily a legit claim, or I guess it depends, right?
It does depend.
It depends. But I mean, we're human. We make mistakes.
Right.
Okay, a surgeon that's doing something and while he is stitching something up or cutting something out, nicking something nearby that creates an additional problem. Just nicks. And then has to, you know, suture that up, and it maybe creates for a while some other problems. Is that a lawsuit? I mean, if he accidentally snicks it, he recognizes it, but it's going to cause a problem. His hand, just a bit, and he stitches it up. Is that a case?
The vast majority of the time it's not, because that is what's deemed to be a risk of the procedure.
Okay.
I mean, you can't.
I mean, it's a very tight space. He's moving, and
right.
You will hope he's got perfect touch, but maybe he, you know, just moves a little bit too much to one side and cuts something he shouldn't have.
Right. Now, Nick, there's an exception to that, which would be if the physician doesn't know where he is, and he's supposed to know where he is. You know, some doctors call it tiger country. You get into some anatomy, and you don't know where you're going because you haven't done enough pre-op surveillance, if you will, of the anatomy to know where you're going. That could be a cause of negligence. Or, you know, if the physician shows up impaired, drunk or high.
Sure.
And that happens sometimes.
Now, if he makes the mistake and nicks something, doesn't notice it, sutures you up, and you start bleeding out.
Depends.
Depends again.
Sometimes that can happen, and the physician's doing everything the physician should do. Other times, the physician should be able to notice there's bleeding, and for whatever reason, does not treat it.
It's interesting because I kind of try to liken this different ball game to a mechanic who maybe has changed the tires on my car. If they're putting those bolts back on, and they don't screw them all the way on properly tight with the pneumatic drill or whatever, and that tire goes flying off, I don't see any gray area there. If they didn't tighten those up properly, I think they're responsible for me wiping out and flipping my car. Well, now, is it different with a surgeon that nicks something? That, you know, is that the same as not tightening the bolt all the way on a car tire?
It could be. And let me give you an example. I'm glad you brought that up. I had my tires changed, and my front left tire had loose bolts, and I could feel the difference in the way the car was going. So anyway, when I got to my girlfriend's house, I actually checked it, and sure enough, it scared me to death. The bolts were loose, and I thought, thank God the tire didn't come off.
Yep.
Now, you know, in that situation, I didn't get harmed. I discovered the problem, fixed the problem. I didn't want to go back to the shop again, but it didn't cause me a problem. But if that tire had come off and I had gotten seriously injured in an auto wreck or gotten killed, then you would definitely have a case. And this is an analogy to medicine. There are times when there can be a negligent act, but it does not cause harm. For whatever reason, the patient recovers, or the patient is able to discover it, or another physician discovers it and treat it. I don't take those cases.
Yeah.
But if that negligence results in someone getting harmed or killed, a serious injury, then I will take that case.
Damages. All right, let's take one call before we go to the break, and we'll go to Marcus. Marcus, good morning.
Good morning to you guys.
Hey.
Good morning, Attorney Kelly. I have 3 points, and I'm going to hit on them quick. First point is, most people don't realize, even if a doctor or hospital is found liable, in the state of Tennessee, you're only going to get so much, and most of that is probably going to be under $1 million, and that's about as much as you can get. And that's even if they cut off the wrong leg, if you had cancer on your right leg, but they cut off the left leg. Basically, you're probably not going to get any more than $750, but they basically put a cap on what you can do as far as suing for malpractice. And basically, that means if I go around here and drive knowing that Metro Police is only going to tell me, pull me over, say slow down, but not give me a ticket, I'm going to probably be more apt to speed up as soon as he leaves and do it again if I know I'm not going to get a penalty for it, which means eventually we're just going to have a whole bunch of wrecks around here in Nashville. Second of all, I would like to ask Attorney Kelly, can you sue Adult Protective Services if they've done things that have basically hampered you from giving the best care for your loved one because they stepped in and overstepped their authority? And then the third question, and I hope you guys have a good day after this, why is Tennessee the most dangerous state according to the FBI stats in the United States? How are we the most dangerous state in the nation? I don't understand that, but that's where we rank right now.
What do you mean dangerous for what? Just violence on the street?
Based on crime, according to the FBI, Tennessee is the most dangerous state in the union.
Well, that's a little off topic, but just keep in mind the statistics. There's different things that I see all the time, naming different states on that. But how about the other two questions you touched on?
Discuss the first two things.
Yeah,
particularly.
What are the caps?
He's exactly right about the caps, and the caps are $750,000 for non-economic damages. In other words, any injury you have or death outside of medical expenses or medical bills, you are capped by law at $750,000. So
that's not chump change.
If you don't have an arm or you don't have a leg and you're 25 years old, that's chump change.
Okay.
I mean, you got to live the rest of your life without a limb or paralyzed. Think of someone, Nick, who's in a wheelchair, who needs constant 24-hour care, needs somebody to literally provide bowel and bladder function for you. You have to have a nurse around with you all the time, and you're sitting in a wheelchair and you're 30 years old. And that's the way you're going to be the rest of your life. $750,000 or $1 million, that's chump change for somebody like that. It's not fair.
Okay.
And by the way, to your point about the caps, it applies to all cases. It's not just medical malpractice. The legislature applied it to every personal injury case.
Is that what's called tort reform?
Yes.
A lot of people hear tort reform. They're tort reform. We're going to get it so that we can. The way it's I think presented by lobbyists, depending on whose side they're on.
Right.
Some people think tort reform, that's great. We need to do that. We need to have limits so that the costs of health care go down, so they don't have to pay so much for malpractice insurance. Stuff like that's what they'll say. And to me, I've always just believed, I don't think we need a cap. Let's just leave it to the jury. The juries can decide.
Well, that's a very conservative principle. And since when do conservatives decide that government will decide what you can get?
Yeah, a cap. I mean, I want the jury of my peers to decide.
As opposed to our regular peers or citizens deciding what's right. If Tennessee juries can send people to death, Tennessee juries can decide what proper damages are. That
to me just seems like common sense.
But there's another point he makes, which is just as important. Our system of civil justice is designed not only to compensate patients, but to deter bad conduct or deter wrongful activity.
Right.
If you reduce damages or cap damages, and insurance companies can incorporate that into their decision making, it's a lot less painful for professionals or other actors to perform negligent acts. I mean, that's the whole idea, is for someone or something to, in essence, punish a wrongful actor so that they don't do it again.
Yeah,
and I'm not just talking about doctors, I'm talking about anybody who is negligent or commits fraud or does some type of intentional act that harms somebody. Our system should be a way to provide safer care or safer conduct, not encourage people to just simply blow it off because the damages aren't going to be that bad.
Right. Before we go to the break, real quick, because we got to rush to it. He had a question about DCS. I don't know if you've ever dealt with a case like that. If an agency somehow gets in the way of you providing care, and who knows what the custody issue with this child is, and then the child suffers somehow because of that, that's not really medical malpractice,
Nick,
is it?
With respect to him, that's just outside my field of expertise.
And that's not really medical malpractice. That would be a different issue there. Whether you have a case or not, another lawyer would probably handle that. We'll take a break. When we come back, more of your phone calls. The line's open. Medical malpractice with Clint Kelly right after this.